Hey everyone, it's Hydro Pump here, and today I am joined by ProStorm, and we are going to be talking about our top 8 Ribbit series number 3 deck lists, and we both topped with Dragon Turbo.
Hey everyone, Pro Storm here. Pretty excited to be on the channel,
Yep,
and yeah, let's
th-
let's get into it.
yeah, thanks for joining me.
Of
So
course.
I guess there's a little bit backstory with this deck. This is kind of in like my creation deck that I topped with in a tournament called Edison Legends around a year ago, and I got third place in that tournament. And the deck's been on and off with hype, and I guess the overall consensus with the deck is that it's pretty inconsistent. But it's a very powerful deck when it does what it wants to do. And we I think about like a month before the actual tournament, Ribbit Series 3, you were like just play Dragon Turbo, and I was like, okay, why not? Because I was kind of struggling finding like a second deck that I really liked,
Yeah.
and I think a couple weeks after that, you were like, I'm gonna play it too. So we kind of like worked on the deck list a lot and try to like refine certain things, and uh, overall, I think it did pretty good because we both made top 8 out of 183 players, and we were on a team called Ring of Destruction, and we had about 8 players play in the tournament as well, and 4 of us topped. So I think overall it was a pretty successful.
Yeah, it was a great weekend. Great results for the team. Great results for the deck itself.
Yeah,
And I think it's funny because people always sleep on Dragon Turbo, and in my eyes, I think well, Hydro when Hydro doesn't play it, it kind of just underperforms, mostly probably because of the pilot. And yeah, when Hydro showed up, like the results came. So now it's back on everyone's radar, for better or for worse.
yeah. And I was talking about like I was on another podcast. It was like the IMNerd Podcast recently this past week. The video's up, but I just kind of talked about how like I topped with the deck initially, but Silch's also topped that tournament. He got second with like the Diva Hero deck, so I think it kind of like overshadowed this deck because everyone just loves heroes. Uh, so this deck didn't like. I thought it was gonna be like a really popular deck, and then like no one did anything with the deck, and then I just go out bring it up in the discords, the as format discords, and then people were just like 5 months later, they're like, "Oh my god, Dragon Turbo, it's crazy," and then I think everyone just kind of wrote it off as like inconsistent. But we're just gonna talk about the deck and this like decisions we made with the deck list and everything. For the most part, the main deck is pretty much like a couple. It's only a couple cards off from like the original build. But yeah, we're just gonna go through and talk about each card decision. I guess starting off with the monsters, we have a Clear Vice Dragon. This is more like a utility dragon. It's a level 8, and it's pretty much the ability is that you can just get over stuff like Honest and Collude and the damage calculation phase. Whereas like if they boost their monster, then this guy just gains the attack that it has after that. Do you want to go over why we played this card in particular? Or
I mean, it just opens up a lot of kill shots you might not otherwise have. Sometimes you can even double tribute for a clear vice to get in the last bit of damage against like a JD or something like that. Actually came up in my top 8 match, which I totally missed and threw. It's also one of the few main deck outs to monsters with more than 3,000 attack. So thinking, for example, like uh, the Gotham's level 9 synchro, the X-Saber guy, um, like Machina Fortress with Solidarity. So just some cards that you can't really beat over. So Clear Vice is another way to out that. Ancient Fairy Dragon in defense. It's just, yeah, I think it's just better utility than White Knight Dragon. If you think about it, White Knight Dragon is same stats as Blue Eyes and really only good versus like Hero Beat and GBs. But you have Blue Eyes to revive anyways. And in terms of the priority of, I guess, dragons who would revive back, number one is probably Prime, which we'll get to in a sec. And then after that, number two is probably Drago to block red like Gores and Trag. Then number three, you're looking at a beater. So I just feel like White Knight probably doesn't really come up that often. And yeah, we replaced it with Clear Vice.
Yeah, and then we were also talking about like right before the tournament we were like considering like Phantom Dragon because originally I was we were originally testing like Phantom Dragon over Gores because it's a dragon, it's a level 8, so it works with trade in and it helps fuel rejuve. Uh, but then it kind of switched to like Clear Vice versus Phantom Dragon, like which one would come up more. And Phantom Dragon just kind of it was only really decent in like the Gladiator Beast matchup, like game one, where like if they just try to turn into Sekitor, where they go like GB Tiger Sekitor, and then you can drop Phantom Dragon there and hope they don't have like a Book of Moon or Smashing Ground. But yeah, overall, Clear Vice is just really nice for just getting those game shots where you probably wouldn't have them. It also has a kind of niche protection effect where if you have to attack into a Mirror Force for game, you can just discard a card instead, and it won't blow up. So it's pretty useful.
Yeah, I think the only downside is it being dark, so you can't revive it with Kawaki Drago on the field. And the second downside is having question mark attack, which
Yeah.
means it does get hit by DDV, which did happen to me versus Cam. But I think those downsides are, you know, very small relative to the upside of just killing sometimes when you don't have the right setup. And yeah, like if you can't go Brio and you need to kill Tyrannus, this is the only way to do so.
Yeah, that was the primary function. Just like if you're in a pickle and you just need to run over a monster, you don't have to worry about Kalut or Honest or any of that nonsense. And I wish it had zero attack just so you can bring it back with like the Bree Dragon. That'd be very nice. But unfortunately, it's a
Yeah,
question
that'd
mark
be sick.
because then
Be
you could play
pretty
then you
broken.
could play stuff like Advanced Draw to like potentially,
Yeah,
which would be some nice gas to the deck. Um, it was one more thing. Oh yeah, White Knight Dragon. Again, we kind of cut that from the original build just because it's not like entirely useful. Its effects pretty niche. The only thing I think the most important thing was it was not a light or dark, so it was a water type, so you can summon with Draco. But again, that's pretty narrow, and like you're like in a winning position anyways. I think it came up once for me in the tournament where it's like I couldn't summon anything else because I had Drago and Red Med on the field. But yeah, that's about the only time White Knight comes up. Um, moving on, we have the 3 Debris Dragon. Yes, Debris Dragon is at 3 in this format, which kind of is very nice because it works with cards of consonants. So you just have another Dragon Tuner to ditch with that, and then it's also just great for like spamming the field. You get Debris, White Stone, or Guard, and then you can just summon your red meds from there. And it's also we'll get into it in a second with Prime Material, but it can also open the gate for Trident Dragon as well.
it's also an FTK versus Hero Beat.
Yeah, the 2000 booty defense is that and
And
guard are
Sabers.
very hard to deal
Yeah.
with. Yeah, X Sabers as well. Can't
Yeah.
Air Balloon can't beat it. I'm
Yeah,
not
it's
sure.
good for walling Sabers, fairies as well. So pretty good.
Yeah, the defense is very underrated on Debris Dragon. Is there anything else that comes up with the Debris Dragon?
Um
I don't think there's much else
against
to really
like
say, but
against I think against worse players it also just baits a crow, which is kind of funny.
oh yeah, there's like DD Crow, your stone or guard, and then you're like, okay, it's
Yeah,
it's probably not
nice
gonna be
random
very
combo.
impactful. Um, okay, so that's the Breed Dragon, and then we'll just kind of do Gores and Trag in one. So I think for a while I was just kind of messing around Gores, being replaced by Phantom Dragon, just because like Gores technically doesn't work with like Future Fusion up or. And I mean that's pretty niche, but then you're drawing so many cards, and you have Future Fusion Gores. It's a little awkward, but overall we decided to go with Gores just because um, and I guess Phantom Dragon's the level 8 dragon as well. But Gores is it's just so strong by itself, and so is Tragodia Like if you just they're great defense for the deck, which a deck that has almost no defense, and then they're probably the strongest in this deck out of any other decks in the format as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love these two. They're still important. Treg one because you can steal your opponent's monsters. That comes up so much because there's so many different levels. Um, like when I was playing against Fen on fairies, I stole like two Ryos or a Ryo and a Recruiter, and it's just crazy. You can also steal opposing red meds. You can steal like add zero Stardust, Colossal Fighter by discarding level eights. It's
You also got
pretty
Prime
nice.
Material as well to steal.
Yeah, to steal a Bryo or a Goyo. And Gores, it's just really nice to drop. It basically buys you a couple of turns. It lets you play through oppression. Another great play is like Gores, and then you summon White Stone and you just access the level 8 synchros. So most importantly, Dark End Dragon, which is just really nice to OTK. And yeah, I would never cut these two. They're just too good.
Yeah, because I
Oh, something else to add. Yeah, something else I just remembered is like when you're playing against Dragon Turbo, you don't know if they're sitting on a bad hand or if they have cores in their hand. So, you're just kind of pushing and hoping to clock them really fast. And that just plays into cores really well. So that's an added benefit of why cores and Trigger are so strong in this deck.
yeah, like the main function or like the best way to beat this deck is just try to like rush some like rush down Dragon Turbo, just like attack and put a lot of pressure early on because they may have a slow hand, but then that also plays into Gore's Tragodia, Lightning Vortex really hard. And again, I don't think any other deck can really do this, but you can actually synchro with Gores and Tragodia like really fluently with this deck. Whereas other decks, there's not like a level one tuner you can really synchro with at this time. So yeah, they open like a million gates of like possibilities. And Tragodia is also like super scary in this deck because your hand's mostly gonna be 6 cards. So it's gonna be 3,600 to 3,000 like 9 out of 10 times pretty much. So that's also like a really
Yeah,
big
yeah,
upside.
Trag is always dropping big, so that's a problem for them to deal with for
Yeah.
sure.
So these cards are like very good. And another thing is once you do the rejuve draw, like if you're just drawing your entire deck, you can just like look for one of these two, and then you just have your defense for the turn. So you know you can't die really. Um, I guess we'll just go to Quackmere Drago. We play this as a one of, which some people may look at as a little awkward. Like the traditional Dragon deck plays 2 to 3 Drago, but in this deck you're just turboing through your deck. You can find it super easy through like Future Fusion and just your draw engine, and then it's also, I mean, it's a level 4, so it's technically a brick. It's not a Curse of Constance target, so you just want to play one as utility, and it shuts down. It shuts down a lot of decks in this format because you can do Red Med, summon Drago, so you can just shut down any plays they have, like Light Swarm, Black Wings, Zombies. It,
Zoo,
what was that?
Fairy.
Oh yeah, Fairy, as well. And then it also opens the gate for just like a sealed like OTK. Like there's no gores. You don't have to worry about Trag. You don't have to worry about Battle Fader, which is pretty much the only like battle hand traps in this format. There's no Swift Scarecrow that you can use. So Trag's is super strong, and it has 1900 attack as well, so it's also massive.
Yeah, it's a really nice beater. Uh, Helps in a GB matchup. 19 1600 are great stat lines. Runs over Fossil Dyna as well. It's nice. Yeah, definitely need one.
Yeah, definitely need one. I mean, I think I think you asked me. You were like, "Can we cut Drago or something?" I was like, "I don't know. I don't know about that." It's a really great card. Uh,
Yeah, but definitely wouldn't play more than one main deck
yeah,
because it's a deck. Your only ways to discard it are Magic Stone Excavation, Card Destruction, and Face Discard for Rejuve.
yeah,
And while Drago's out, you actually can't summon Red Mid. So just like if your opponent is smart, they can leave Drago on the field and just slow the game down, which
yeah.
I've done against you quite a few times.
Yeah, it's definitely like a liability at times, but I feel like it's definitely necessary to play.
For sure, for
You just
sure.
have to know how to like utilize the card really well. So that's kind of like the skill of the deck, just knowing how to play with Drago, when's the timing right to summon it, and can you dodge your own Drago lock, essentially. So uh, the next card is a new addition to the deck. It is Prime Material Dragon, and you played this card in you played in Rimba 2. You played regular dragons, like just like the trap dragons, we'll call it. And you main deck this card when most builds usually don't. And through our testing for that tournament, this card was like almost like MVP because it just dodges torrential oppression, mirror force really well. So, and we decided to include it in this build of Dragon Turbo. Yeah, it's not a level 8, and it doesn't really help with trade in cards of constants. So it's kind of like Drago in a sense, where it's technically a brick, but the utility behind this card is just unbelievable, and I think it's pretty good. So, yeah, anything else you want
Yeah,
to add on to it?
for sure. I mean, I think one problem with the older Dragon Turbo lists were if you made a big board and your opponent set Fossil Dyna, you were kind of screwed. Or if your opponent had an absolute zero, you just had no efficient way to kill the absolute zero and maintain your board unless you could like turbo it to start off with red man, and that just gets really complicated. So Prime is just a great way to let you kill through Ab Zero. You just discard a card and deal with it. It's Yeah, it's just really nice. You don't have to worry about TT, Mirror Force. If you turn one go red Prime, then you're safe from oppression, which is a huge deal as well. It dodges Icarus. It's an FTK against any burn deck, which honestly I thought there'd be more chain burn because I think it's a sleeper deck for sure. And Prime just says like, yeah, you can play chain burn and we'll laugh in your face. Um, yeah, I think mainly just outing Ad Zero, Fossil Dyna, and those pesky traps is so nice, and definitely makes it a strong addition.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about like if you're playing as quick draw, you don't have to worry about them just like summoning Debris Dragon in the Black Rose,
Black
uh,
Rose, yeah.
and then you don't have to worry about like set Raikou. You can just run it over and whatnot, kind of like Fossil Dyna. There's probably a couple other situations where it's just like really good as well, but it also gives you access to like it's a level 6, so it gives you like a little bit different paths to the extra deck as well. Uh, the most notable one is probably Trident Dragon, where you can just it's another OTK enabler where you can just pop 2 cards and then it gets 3 attacks. That's 9,000. So your opponent may be like 10,000 or 11,000 life points, and then Trident Dragon can just like go through all that, and then
Yeah,
Exploder
yeah,
Dragon Wing as
tried
well.
it. For sure. So I think Prime High giving you access to extra deck is really important. Even with like Lightning Vortex and Instant Fusion, the deck can struggle with Spirit Reaper sometimes and Marshmallow and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So being able to access Exploder Dragon Wing to kill those is really nice. And Trident Dragon is yeah, it's stupid. I remember in our testing, Hydra was like, I've never made this guy in my life. And literally the first 4 games, he all won with Trident Dragon. It's pretty stupid. There'd be boards where I think I was at 11,000 and I had a Necro Guard in my graveyard, and you would just go like double red Trident and just kill through Necro at 11,000. It was stupid. And during the actual R.B.E.T event, um, I think my first 4 wins of the day, 3 of them came from Trident kills. It was just insane.
yeah. I think I had a couple situations where it came up as well. I did. I had one game where I actually lost because I didn't have a second card to pop for Trident Dragon, and then I just lost the next turn. So yeah, this card is just like amazing. It makes me wonder like if there was any games. I mean, it probably was. If there was any games in the past, like tournaments I played in, where this card actually won me a situation where I wasn't playing Prime Material, so it wasn't an option. And you make this with a Debris Dragon Prime Material. That's level 10, and Exploder Dragon Wing. It's also really good too, just for again this outing like a Spirit Reaper or even a Recruiter as well. It's pretty nice. You can pop it and whatnot. I'm not sure if there's any other situations where it comes up, but yeah, this is a really good utility from the extra deck just from running Prime Material Dragon, and then Prime Material Dragon's also does really good itself. All right, so kind of like the boss monster of the deck, we got three Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. Uh, in the past, you said that it was potentially you can play two, but you definitely need three just in case you can't. You definitely want to have like two access to two, which is very possible when you're going through your entire deck, and it just sets up OTKs really easily. This is before the errata, so you can summon red mid, special summon a dragon, summon another red mid, special summon a dragon, and then you just have a huge board of dragons. Then lets you OTK. So yeah, that's where like these utility dragons come up, like Clear Vice, Drago, Prime Material. They're very nice for just spamming the field. That's pretty much how you like win most of your games. You just summon 1 to 2 red mid, and then just let the floodgates open and just win the game in a turn. Is there anything else you want
Yeah,
to say
I
about
mean,
red mid?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the most broken cards in the format. It's ridiculously easy to get out. If you look at the dragons, they're all like, I think the closest comparable would be like Saber Fault Troll. But compared to Fault Troll, Red Mid's so much easier to get out because you just banish any dragon. And the monsters you summon with Red Mid are just better than any of the X Sabers. So it's basically, you know, even if you don't kill, you have a board of, let's say, Red Mid and Prime. Your opponent has to break your board, otherwise it just snowballs into incredible advantage that just wins you the game. Like a 3+1 every turn with a big beater, built-in protection, or it's just like stupid.
Yeah, and just
It should not be at three.
yeah, just to add on to that as well, like as format, like there's like a lot of boss monsters. You got JD, you got Dark on Dragon, you have Christia, Absolute Zero. Like all those boss monsters are really strong, but Darkness Metal Dragon is probably the easiest to summon and like less condition out of all those, and it's just like super strong uh, in that case. Where all those other boss monsters they kind of take like a big setup, where this you can just like summon it out. Um, Moving on, we have just like the three white stone. You have to play these, and then like the three blue eyes. White stone is a cards a consonants target, so you ditch this, and then you can get blue eyes. So it's a +1 there, and blue eyes can go with trade in and whatnot. So you got to kind of snowball if you go cards a consonants, white stone, and then trade in blue eyes. You get the +1, and you dig 4 cards. So it just gets a little crazy, and yeah, it just wipes away the fact that you're playing 3 normal monsters. Actually, 4 with Flame Bell Guard. Uh, but yeah, those are like necessary decks or cards. Um, and then we got the one Flame Bell Guard, cards of Constance target. You may look at this as like not very important. It's just a normal monster that works with uh, cards of Constance. But it actually comes out to where it's a monster that you can summon with Debris Dragon that's not a light or dark. So if you have Drago and you summon Debris Dragon, get guard, and then you go into Instant Fusion, summon Element of Hero Mariner, and then go into just like Brionic or whatever else you can make at the time. So it's situational, but it definitely comes up, and it's pretty handy. Is there anything else about guard that's important?
Yeah, I mean, originally we were contemplating if we cut guard for Card Trooper, uh, but one of my main arguments for keeping guard is it's another normal summon bull monster dragon that you can banish for red med. So I think that's really important. You'll have a lot of games where you're stuck with red meds in hand and you just need like a debris or white stone or flammable guard to get going. So yeah, just having that there is really important and justified its inclusion.
Yeah, there's just like plenty of times where it's just like, oh, thank God I have guard to just banish for the red med. So just having like that
Yeah.
seventh small dragon you can just banish is just really nice.
Yeah, it makes your cards of consonance slightly more consistent as well. It makes your card destruction and magical stone excavations better to feel rejuve. Yeah, just felt and being 2000 defense to wall. like fairies to wall. Hero beat is nice. So yeah.
Yep. So that rounds out the monsters. We actually cut a monster overall. We cut the card trooper, so we used to have 19 monsters, but now we just have 18. Card trooper would probably be like the 41st card, in my opinion, just because it mills, so you can fill up your grave for pot or magical stone, and then it's a debris target, so you can go into Black Rose Dragon or like a level 7 play, potentially level 8 if you have that set up, and then there's it's kind of like just like a fourth upstart goblin, so where you just throw it out there, run over a monster, and then if it dies, you just draw a card. So it replaces itself really well, but we just didn't find it like completely necessary. And then it gets a little bit worse when you side out magical stone excavation, because then it comes to like a liability. It's like, ooh, do I really want to mill heavy storm giant grenade? So it gets a little fishy after that. But yeah, card trooper's good. Is this didn't quite make the cut in this build?
Yeah, I think it's also a bit worse in the meta right now because you don't want the trooper to get Kayast, you don't want to get wing blasted. You're really only committing cards to the board when you have a push.
Yeah,
So if like trooper gets Ryzed or wing blasted, you're set back a turn, and that just really sucks.
yeah, that as well. Alrighty, getting into the spells. We'll just go over like the draw cards first. So we have 3 cards of constants, 3 trade-in. Uh, those cards just like work really well with your monsters. You have 7 cards of constants targets, and then you have 4 trade-in targets. And you may be wondering like, why do you have more cards of constants targets than trade-in? Well, Whitestone, when it's sent to the grave, you add a blue eye, so in a way it kind of counts as more level 8s in that sense. Uh, because you're just getting more access to your blue eyes. So you technically, I mean, in a sense, you're playing 7/7, whereas Lightstone counts as both, which is kind of interesting. Is there
I
anything?
would count Future Fusion as a trade-in target as well.
Yeah,
Because usually when you send Future Fusion, you get like two or three blue eyes in hand.
yeah. And Future Fusion is pretty disgusting. It's just filters through your deck. But yeah, these are your like main draw cards. Like if you're opening those with like the right part, then you're just gonna be like flying through your deck. You also play the 3 L-Star just for consistency. Just you're just drawing through your entire deck. The life points doesn't really matter too much. There might be a game or two where it catches you. It caught me one game in the tournament where it's like, if I think I was 200 life points off when the guy was at 10k for game. Uh, but overall,
Well,
I think
honestly, that doesn't matter in my opinion, because if you're not killing them, you're setting up a board of like Red Med, Prime, Drago, and it's like, what are they gonna do about that? They're
yeah,
just gonna win the next
yeah.
turn.
Most of the time, it's just you're just gonna win anyways. But yeah, I think it's better to have Upstart Goblin in this deck rather than playing like 3 other bad cards. Like, what's the 3 like next like better cards you could play? Like, they're usually just kind of just mediocre and just filler spots anyway. So I think Upstarts that's like really good inclusion in this deck in particular.
Yeah, I mean, there's something else I was trying out for a bit, which was like three Toon Table of Contents and a Blue Eyes Toon Dragon. But it didn't work out that well. So,
Yeah,
so yeah.
that engine's a little weird too because like if you what happens if you draw like 2 Toon Table or like Toon Table Blue Eyes, the Toon version? It gets like it's essentially a brick in your hand, whereas Upstart's just like a straight up this
Yeah,
new
for
card.
sure.
Okay, so we got through like most of the draw cards. We'll just jump into like the rest of the stuff. We got card destruction and future fusion. These are like the 2 god cards in your deck. Um, I had a game where I opened both of them. Let's talk about future fusion first. Future fusion just like it's crazy in this deck, but it's different than the other dragon deck. Whereas dragon deck, the regular one with like wyverns and all that, and the main deck, you can that's just like the game card in that deck. Whereas like you resolve it, you're probably just gonna win because you go wyvern, wyvern, red eyes, and then you summon 2 red eyes at the end phase, and they have to deal with it that turn. Whereas this deck, you're dumping a bunch of white stones, you're dumping your utility dragons, you're adding blue eyes to your hands. Whereas you might think that it doesn't sound that good, but if you have like other draw cards like trade in to go with the blue eyes, or just like Pie or add everything back, you're putting everything in the grave for utility, for red mid, it gets pretty crazy. And then on top of that, in a couple turns, if it sticks, then you get the five-headed dragon, which is a massive monster.
Yeah, I
Uh,
was just about to say like people think Future Fusion's busted in dragons, which is rightfully so, but it's actually not that strong in this deck, unless you have like card destruction or trade in to pair with it.
yeah,
Because if you just end with like Future Fusion and like six dragons in hand, uh, you're basically playing with one life card, right? So it's contrary to like popular belief, it's actually not that busted. But if you have Future Fusion with like an Avarice, I mean, even with Avarice, I'm not a big fan of like turn one Future Fusion Avarice because then
yeah,
you're just shuffling the bricks back, right? You need to have like a trade in to pair with the Future Fusion, and then things get out of hand. But yeah, if you just see your opponent resolve Future Fusion, not that good.
yeah. This card is more so like a starter than like a game ender in this deck, which I like.
Yeah,
You're
it,
getting
it,
you're
yeah,
getting
it's a
five.
painful choice.
Yeah, you're getting five, or technically like you can get upwards to eight dragons out of your deck, and then the rest of your deck's is gas. So if you have any like draw
Yeah,
engine,
it's all
then
gas.
you're just gonna go through your entire deck and then just probably just win the game there. And then we'll just
Yeah,
talk about the other
I mean,
draw.
yeah. So I was just saying, there's a reason why Foolish is limited and painful choice is banned.
Yeah, yeah. This is literally just painful choice in this deck. Uh, and then we'll go over card destruction as well. Card destruction is just insane. It's probably the strongest card in this deck, just because you're discarding like a bunch of dragons and you're drawing gas. And then if you're discarding dragons, it walks into Rejuve, and you just go from there and probably win the game. It can be a little bit of liability against like other decks like that can rely on the graveyard and get stuff in the grave like Lightsworn or Vayu Turbo.
My
Yeah. But overall, it's just like too OP in this deck to like not play it, because if you go like, I don't know, if you get White Stone, you get free Blue Eyes, and then it's just like a +1, and you have another card to start for card destruction. You're just seeing a lot more of your deck. So you can literally open like card destruction, five dragons that are unplayable, and then just you're in the game where otherwise you wouldn't be.
Yeah, it's definitely a busted card. Against fairies, you mess up their fairy count for Christia, so that's another underrated aspect.
Yeah.
And in the mirror, you can deck the other guy out.
Oh yeah, it's very. You have to watch out for that in like the mirror, or like any if I'm playing this deck and I'm playing a deck that I think would probably run card destruction. By chance, I purposely make it so it's like I have enough cards in deck to like so I wouldn't die to a card destruction, which it came up a couple times before. Um, yeah, but Future Fusion and card destruction combined is this like actual game if you resolve both. Because you go Future Fusion, add 2 to 3 blue eyes from your deck to your hand, and then card destruction, you're gonna draw something good off all those pluses. Um, and going from there, we'll just talk about Heavy Storm and Trunade. Really good cards. These are like the two cards you want to dig for most of the time, and what makes the deck so strong. Because you're just digging through your entire deck, you make the perfect hand, and then the next turn you just Heavy Storm, Giant Trunade. Their back row doesn't matter, and then it just opens the gate for the OTK push. Um,
Yeah, the two sweepers are good. I wouldn't add any more. Um,
yeah,
like Cold Wave conflicts because you want to play your draw spells. And MST we have in the sideboard. I think anymore you're kind of ruining the engine.
yeah. And there's times
And
like
we
you
have
even open these two, like one or both, and they're like considered bricks, in that
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
So
yeah. You never want to open any of them because you want to ideally deep draw into them. And yeah, and it's not like we just play two sweepers because we also have two magic stones, so technically we're playing like four sweepers.
yeah,
Um,
and yeah, those cards are pretty just nasty. Giant Truenade's like even better than Heavy Storm just because they can't Starlight Road or punish you that way. I mean, you're gonna win regardless. So it's just two insane cards. And well, let's talk about Rejuve now, just because we talked about mostly everything else. Rejuve just it's kind of like what the deck's built around. You're discarding a bunch of dragons, and then at the end phase you're drawing. So if you discard 3 dragons this turn, you activate it, you draw 3, and then if you draw another Rejuve on top of that, because it's a quick play, you can just play it again and draw 3 more. And it just kind of snowballs. You make the perfect hand. It doesn't matter that you're discarding cards at the end phase because a hand size limit. You're just getting the best six cards in your hand, and you're just gonna use them to win the next turn. So really, what makes the deck go, because it just makes it so you're just gonna win the next turn.
I think, like contrary to popular belief, like this deck isn't really that brain dead. There's a lot of complex decisions you have to make, and most of them revolve around Rejuve. Either like, do I play the Rejuve early or not? And for end phase discard, what cards am I keeping in my hand? There's actually a lot of complexity there. For example, like you want to keep all your red beds. You also need your sweepers, but how many sweepers do you keep? What if one gets solemn? Can you play through like solemn and bribe? And for example, what if they chain dust shoot and you need at least like two debris in hand so you don't lose your starter and then all your red meds become bricks. Decision factors like that. It's actually quite complicated and usually there's some trade-off. Like, oh, do I hold out Vortex? What if they drop a Christia or Phosphodina? Can I still like answer that? Do I need to hold Instant Fusion? Because what if they just set a Reaper? Can I out that? And basically, yeah, like you need to decide what to keep in your hand and what to discard. And I think that actually takes a lot of skill. For me personally, that's what I spend most of my time in the games like deciding upon, because those decisions make or break your entire match.
Yeah, it's really important. Like I had one game where I had like this eight cards. I was like, man, I could not decide which ones I want to keep. Um, it took me a minute to figure out, but I decided like to just discard a Gores against like I forget what matchup it was. I think it was like Hero Beat because like they're probably not gonna kill me because I had stuff on the field too that I can't really pressure. So I was like, I don't really need that because the rest of my hand was just gas to win the next turn anyways. But yeah, this card is just nasty. And there's actually like I'll just talk about it in a second. But there's like also like alternative ways to like you don't have to go through like cards of constants trade in to just like resolve this card. And that'll come from like the utility stuff in the rest of the deck. But yeah, nasty card. We got two Pi Avers. You may like wonder is like why are you playing Pi Avers? It's more so just like so you're pretty much discarding all your cards, all your dragons, and you need a way to get them back. So there's maybe games where you just discard all your debris dragons, or all your white stones and whatnot, all your red mids, and you need to fish them back and then draw into like try to find them again. So I think Pi Avers is really good for that, and it just refuels your deck for like another big draw push.
Mhm.
Um, is there anything else you want to say about Pi?
Yeah, well, when I first tried the deck out, I was experimenting with just one pot. But then I noticed a lot of my games, I was just running out of gas. Because, you throw away red meds for Magic Stone excavation or card destruction, and then if you only have one Avarice in a deck, you have to dig it to get your red med gas back into the deck. So that just wasn't a favorable situation. So yeah, definitely need two pots.
Yeah, I even had a game with like with Magical Stone where in the tournament where I resolved three Pot Avers in a turn, which is pretty crazy. Just to like get through the deck, and it was I mean it got me there, and it was pretty nice because I was just trying to dig for Rejuves and draw, and I kept on drawing like all the trade-ins, cards of consonants off it and stuff, so it was pretty nice there. But yeah, I think definitely two is necessary in this deck. One, you're kind of like you're running it pretty thin because you do like need a refuel a lot. And then getting into the utility cards, I think it's the last two cards aside from Magical Stones. You got Instant Fusion and Lightning Vortex. Instant Fusion was in the original build, but Lightning Vortex is a new addition to the deck. Just to talk about Instant Fusion first, though, it's really good just because it gives you access to the extra deck, whereas otherwise you probably wouldn't have access to most of these monsters. So Instant Fusion, it gives you access to Dark Fire Dragon, which can be like another monster you can summon off or you just banish for Darkness Metal, and it can give you access to Catastrophe if you happen to need it. It doesn't really come up too often, but it's just mostly there for like the red mid access. And then you got two level fives. You got Elemental Hero Mariner and Musician King. And you may ask like why you play two level fives. Musician King is for access to Tempest Magician, and you may say like, okay, you can just play Musician King and not play Mariner, but Musician King is light, so that conflicts with Quackimiro Drago, where you can't activate Infusion. So you might have a situation where you have Debris Dragon, Drago, Infusion to get back a tuner, and then you just make a synchro or something like Brionic. Um, Whereas Mariner you can do that with, but Mariner is a 1400. Um,
It's on the bottomless.
yeah, it gets under bottomless, and it's a warrior for your opponent's Colossus Fighter. Because if you make a board of like red meds and attack, and if you have Mariner in the grave, their Colossus Fighter is going to be at 29 instead of 28, so you can't crash into all your monsters and kill them all. So that's relevant. Um, but yeah, it gives you access to like just like weird synchros that you wouldn't have, like Brionic and Tempest Magician, which is pretty important, I think.
Yeah, they feel rejuvenation as you were mentioning earlier. Like if you open turn one, uh, a tuner and instant fusion and a bunch of dragons and rejuve, you can make Bryo or Tempest, bounce a bunch of your opponent's cards or burn them, and then refill your hand. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, I think you had like a test hand where you're like, would you make Tempest or Brio in that situation? And I was like, you had like, because you were synchroning with a White Stone and you had another White Stone in hand. I was like, just do Brio because you can Brionic balance your Super Juve, and then
Yeah, yeah,
you just White Stone gets you two more Blue Eyes, um, or it gets you like an extra search, whereas Tempest wouldn't do that because Tempest is only once per turn, whereas Brio you can just keep on doing it. So it gets you an extra draw of
yeah.
that.
And Brio's a better threat against decks that are like turn one set Raikou or
Yeah.
can't really pressure them.
And then Tempest is just in get you that last bit of damage for like an OTK push, which comes up, and then it could also just like burn you outright. So it's kind of like a Dark Strike fighter in a sense that can
Yeah, I
also
mean,
feel
one of
empty.
your games, it was game three, losers finals. You beat Sochess with Tempest Burn, although Brio would have gotten there as well. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So both those cards I feel are pretty necessary, and you only play one Instant Fusion, so it's not like you're breaking on it really too much. That's the reason why you play one. And one Lightning Vortex is a new addition. We decided to play this card just because to out like weird stuff like a Christia, whereas we wouldn't have like
awesome.
any outs to out the card.
Yeah, I mean, in our testing, I remember like just dropping Christie a lot game one, either tribute summoning it or dropping it with its special summon ability. And then I just asked Hydra, like, I don't think you have any main deck outs to this, right? And he would just scoop.
Yeah,
And then I realized,
anytime you summon Christia, I was just like, well, that's game.
yeah. And then I was just like, man, if we're gonna make a deep tourney run, there's no way. Like, we definitely need one main deck out to this because someone's gonna pull up with fairies or Vanity Fiend and in the main deck, and I just don't want any auto loss in game one.
Yeah, and it also just helps deal with like the like stuff that would normally be a problem, like a dupe block or
Ab
absolute zero.
Zero,
Yeah,
yeah,
because otherwise you have to go like through obscure ways with the instant fusion to like get rid of those cards, which can be a little bit
yeah,
harder to reach, and you're committing to the field on top of that, so it can be a little awkward to clear out
totally.
zero. So lightning
Yeah, I remember
vortex,
one of my yeah, it's Valiant Vortex is nice. I remember one of my earlier round matches against Hero Frog. He had a dupe lockout, and I just had to dig for an institution or Vortex, and I found it. So if I didn't have Vortex, there'd only just be one institution to out it and kill him that turn. So just be pretty low odds.
yeah, and then or another thing, like someone summoned an absolute zero against me in the tournament. I was just like, okay, like if I didn't have vortex in deck, I would have been kind of shaking, like oh god, like I have to go through a weird way to out this, but and we also have Prime Material out as well, which is a nice addition. But uh, yeah, Vortex is just like a great card. It was like the MVP of like the sideboard in past tournaments, so it's like it was kind of like a really good idea to add at least one to the main deck. And then just to go over the last two cards, we got Magical Stone Excavation. Uh, this card is just kind of like what lets you run like a lot of one ofs, like one Vortex, one Instant Fusion, and then you got the sweepers, one ofs. It's just like a ultimate toolbox card. This and Pi Avarice is like let you toolbox your entire deck, find exactly what you need, and just like replenish your deck in whatever ways you need to. So it's like if you sculpt your hand like the with Rejuves, and then you end it with like Magical Stone, Heavy Storm, Trunade, you can just like Giant Trunade, your opponent's Solemn Judgments. Okay, I'm gonna Magical Stone Trunade back, do it again, and then they probably just won't have it out. And then you're also discarding dragons, so you can do a play where you do activate Super Rejuve, and then you go Magical Stone drop, discard Blue Eyes and like whatever dragons, and you add Rejuve back. You draw two for the first Rejuve at least, and then you activate the second Rejuve that you just added back, and draw another two, which can snowball if you even, you know, discarded even more dragons. So it's just like a really good card. You can add all your spells back, and you just have like ultimate utility in the deck.
Yeah, it's just nice to fix bad hands where you have like multiple dead dragons and a rejuve. It's kind of like a mini card destruction. Um, so yeah, it's nice in that
Yeah,
aspect.
yeah, like
We
normal.
we did try.
Yeah, good.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's
We
fine.
did try Allure of Darkness in place of the second MSC for a bit, just because you have Clear Vice, Scores, Strike, and like three red meds, so Allure kind of helps dig. But we ran a bunch of tests to figure out if Allure or MSC would be better, and ultimately concluded MS. Like a lot of times they're kind of net neutral, but there be more times where MSC would be worthwhile just to fix those bad hands of like multiple blue eyes and rejuve but no discard spell.
Yeah, it was like kind of close between the two. Um, which I think Allure was fine, but you needed to have a dark. And then MSC just like if you happen to open one of your three Rejuves, it just made like that. It just made Rejuve like so much better to open with, whereas normally it's just like not great because you could do like Allure, draw a couple cards, but if it's not gas, then your Rejuve's not gonna be doing anything in your opening hand. So Rejuve like with Instant Fusion and the two MSC, like opening Rejuve could just be like really nutty because it just like helps you dig through your deck because you're discarding with Brio or Tempest, or then you're discarding with Magical Stones, which is pretty nice. So that's what I was talking about earlier, where it's like you just have like obscure ways to like resolve this card and dig through your deck as well, aside from like drawing trade in cards of constants. Anyways, that wraps up the main deck. I just want to explain everything again. We'll kind of just try to speed through the extra deck and side deck because we already talked about like 50 minutes, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, we'll just go through the side deck really quick. Cyber Dragon, we wanted. This is like you wanted to include this and Chimera Tech just because like the machine decks they can kind of just rush you down really quick, so you can just summon Cyber Dragon and just swipe their whole board. Like it get specifically like the Ancient Gear deck or like there's summoning fortresses kind of hard to deal with and you're taking a lot of damage.
Yeah, definitely the machine decks can pressure fast. So Sidra is just a nice way to answer that. Came up for me once, one of my early rounds. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
guess
didn't.
you can cut it, but
Yeah,
I think it's I was struggling with macking out gadgets in testing, so uh, I think for me it was fine to include.
yeah, we don't really play traps, so that duck can kind of just snowball on you out of nowhere. I personally, I don't even really play tests. You did like most of the legwork for testing up to this tournament because you were just like usually play like a lot and test like a lot of different decks. So you like did I just kind of like went off what your advice for the most part on like stuff like in the side deck because like you had like a lot more experience against these other matchups that I haven't really played against because you just do a lot of testing. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what teams are for as well, right?
yeah,
uh,
yeah, I guarantee like if either of us, well, I don't know if we would have both made top eight if we are just kind of like work on the deck ourselves and then just kind of like try to go from there. Rather, like we got the team, we were like working together and we got a lot of good testing in. Uh,
for sure, for sure.
yeah, but yeah, Cyber Dragon was just kind of like another card to take off the pressure versus those decks. So it can be nice, but I didn't play against any machine decks, so it didn't really come up for me. We got the two Drago and the two Wyvern, and then so pretty much like half our side deck is just like a package for like two decks that happen to be like kind of bad matchups for us. So I was kind of combined them all in one. You got like the two Drago, the two Wyvern, the Book of Moons, and the two Oppression, and these are all kind of for just like they're mostly for just Gladiator Beasts and X Sabers, which can be bad matchups because you got Heraclinos versus Gladiator Beasts. If they just turbo into that with Secutor, it can be kind of hard. And then you got X Sabers, which can just like discard your whole hand with like Arabellums and then Gothams, which can be a problem as well. So these cards are kind of all
Yeah.
for that matchup.
Yeah, I mean, the four dragons, they're 1900 or 1800 and 1600 defense, so really hard for sabers and GBs to run over. Oppression stops them cold. So then we kind of just switch up the deck strategy from like combo wombo into just beatdown. Like if you have a level 4 dragon backed by oppression, those decks basically fold.
Yeah.
They can't do anything. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you have like one of these guys with Oppression or a Book of Moon, they probably just like lose. I remember like one time like I had Book of Moon and you went like GB Tiger and that was Book of Moon the GB and then you just lost, which is
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. And then you
Yeah.
and they also have like other utility like you can bring Dragos in against like fairies or like Vayu because it just like stops them because they can't summon anything, and you got Wyverns for like the DDV decks
Yeah.
like Blackwings Vayu. They can just ruin your day a little bit. And then Oppression, it was a couple decks that we consider bringing Oppression in first, but overall, I don't. It's not like amazing against like the other matchups.
Yeah, like in testing, we've tried it against zombies and Diva Hero, and it's a nice surprise factor, but it just makes our own like we felt because those decks don't run oppression themselves. We felt we can just our chances of winning are better if we just stuck to our original game plan.
Yeah, like a lot of matchups, we were just like, we'll just stick to the regular game plan and just kill them with their main deck. So like a lot of times with this deck, you don't want to be siding like too much, but against like these particular matchups like GB X Saber, you kind of want to bring a lot because you're kind of changing the game plan. Otherwise, you're just kind of siding like upwards from like 1 to 4 cards at max against the other matchups because you don't want to like ruin your engine, which is pretty important.
Sure. Yeah.
And just for the rest of the side deck, you got the lightning vortex. Uh, I used to play three, but it kind of replaced it the third one with the treacherous trap hole. You mainly just want ways to like deal with your opponent's threats because your opponent's gonna bring in like Fossil Dyna, Vanity's Fiend, and then you got the regular threats like Christia, Absolute Zero. So and then on top of that, they're going to be trying to rush you down for damage just to get the game over real quick, and then you just sweep their board up, and then you're relieved of that pressure. So these cards are kind of like always just like the MVP of the side deck, just because they deal with like all the problematic monsters pretty much.
Yeah, Tretch was definitely MVP for me. One reason why I like Tretch over the third Vortex is because you can play it on your opponent's turn. Whereas L Vortex, you kind of have to take in big damage before you can kill their board. So yeah, Tretch just gives you a way to interact on your opponent's turn. And it came up big for both of us. It stopped an Iron Chain deck out from your
Yeah,
quick draw opponent. For me, it stopped the Nitro Warrior killing Prime, so my opponent couldn't go Black Rose. Main phase two, it killed like Fossil Dyna and Ab Zero in one matchup. Um, for versus Fen, it killed like Herald and a level four, so she couldn't go Bryo drop Christia. Just yeah, really, really good. It was a nice surprise factor, but now people know, so they'll probably keep in their spell trap removal. But yeah, still a really great card.
yeah, it's a little bit of shake up for people because they don't know if they should take out like MST, Heavy Storm, or their back row Hate, and then they get caught with the trap hole, and so like sometimes like MST or Heavy Storm will be good for a trap hole, and then other times you don't have trap hole, and then those cards are just really bad. So it's kind of like this deck makes it really hard to like for your opponent to side because like you got Lightning Vortex and Trap Hole for like this to sweep up their board where they bring in those hate cards like Vanity's Fiend, Fossil Dyna, and all that. Um, and then other cards on the side deck, we got My Body as a Shield. This was mostly for like the fairy
Very
decks. Yeah, just so you don't get ruined by Herald. You can just play through it. Um, but yeah, that's mostly what my buy is a shields for, just like the fairy matchup, and it might come in like you might,
Light Sworn.
yeah, light sworn so they can't JD or celestial you. You would think it might come up in Blackwings, but Blackwings just because they have Icarus attack and deck dev, but that matchup is like they're just putting pressure on you really quick, so it's a heavy toll of life points. Um,
Yeah, 1500's a lot.
yeah, like they might put you down to like 1400, and then you can't activate the card. Um, and we also have the MST just for general back row hate. It's what was It was like some weird matchups we can bring in against like uh maybe like Lightsworn just so if like they're on T-Roar they can't do that or beckoning. It's just kind of like a good replacement for like the Heavy Storm and Trunade for some decks like the Frog decks they have like Wing Blast and all that, so you have like an opportunity to MST uh if you have it set rather than these cards, um, which
Yeah,
is a little
just
interesting.
another auto oppression as
Yeah,
well,
yeah. So
and any random floodgates.
yeah, and then you got the two roll decree. It's not as busted because there's not like a lot of decks you can bring the decree in that's like super effective. But this is mostly for like the hero beat deck, which I played against two times. It was a fancy diesel. I played him in like in the bracket and then top four, and this card was just like amazing versus that because you got Trinate, Heavy Storm, and then two Decree, and you have all this draw power, so you're gonna see like at least one or multiples of these cards, and they just all wipe out the hero beat deck.
Yeah, hero beat and stun.
Yeah,
Anything on multiple bribes and that stuff. Because if they bribe your Trinade and Storm, then sometimes you can't play through the back row, and that kind of sucks. So
yeah,
Decree's just good insurance.
yep. That pretty much wraps up the side deck. I guess cards we usually take out. Two MSE just because it sucks against DD Crow. And then sometimes Pi Avers, just one Pi Avers, you want to keep like, at least one in most matchups, unless it's like a really anti deck, or you're just like not gonna have time to like resolve it. You just don't want to draw like two Pi Avers if you're getting beat down or clocked really quick. Um, and then sometimes you bring out Dragon Gores, you bring in like Decrees or something like that, or like a weird matchup where you don't have to like Hero Beat. You can just replace Dragon Gores for like roll Decree, and it's fine because they can't really pressure you. And then like just like various things. If Clear Ice isn't gonna be super important, you can maybe side that out and whatnot. But aside from those cards, like you're not really taking out a whole lot. I guess the deck dev decks you can maybe take out a guard, just because you don't want deck dev for like a lot. But yeah, that's pretty much the side deck. Is there anything else you want to add to it?
Oh, I think you covered it. It's mostly siding out three or four max at a time. We came up with a big sideboard plan for all the different decks and discussed, how different sideboard interactions affect the engines. And yeah, and figuring out which kind of utility cards in the main deck aren't so good in certain matchups. Like, for example, you don't really need Vortex against decks that don't have Dyna or Vanity Scene. You don't need Instant Fusion against decks that can wall behind, like a Spirit Reaper or Marshmallow, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So we're just gonna go through the extract. We kind of talked about most of them already, but again, Chimera Tech is just for like Cyber Dragon. Darkfire, Mariner, Musician King is for the instant fusion access, which I feel all of them are necessary. I did it in my older build. I used to have like Dragoness, which is the level 3 warrior, and then I had like Armory Arm, but we decided to take those out just for like they're very niche.
Space, yeah.
Yeah, and then yeah, I had like other cards we just wanted to play, and obviously you got the five-headed dragon. I actually lost a game where I didn't have two five-headed dragons. It was like the first. It was game two of the first round in the tournament, which was very. It was like the first time that ever happened, where it's like I Pi averaged all my dragons back into my deck. I drew red med, and then because I had future fusion face up, and then the next turn I summoned five-headed dragon. And I had a situation where I could banish five-headed dragon for red med, and then giant tree grenade my future fusion back, and then activate future fusion again to load up my grave. But the 5 hit is gonna be banished, so I can't reveal 5 hidden. So that was a weird situation, but I actually ended up losing a game to that. So the extra deck is just pretty much like you can have upwards to like 20 viable extra deck cards in this deck. It just kind of and most of them are just gonna have like one very niche situation where it will come up. You just have to kind of figure out which ones come up the most out of that. Which so yeah, that was a weird situation for me. Anything to note on the fusions at all? Or
No, not really. It's just space is so tight. You
yeah,
just gotta make trade-offs. And I felt like the list we pulled up with was pretty optimal. Um, yeah.
cool. We play Catastor. You don't really go into it too much, but if you have like a White Stone and a Wyvern, you can do that. Or Instant Fusion with Darkfire. I didn't summon Catastor at all,
Or
and then you got Tragodia as
I
well.
got it a few times. Trag, yeah. Against Fairy, I did Trag steal a level 4, make Catastor, and it forced an oppression, which was nice. Because then it meant my Trag could stay alive.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's probably like the most common situation where you like Trag, you steal your opponent's monster with like discarding Debris Dragon or Drago, and then you just don't want to leave their monster sitting on the field. Like if it's again like a Shining
Like a
Angel,
floater.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can just get rid of it and then it turns into a Catastor, which is pretty nice. We played Ancient Fairy Dragon, but no Black Rose Dragon. The reason we didn't play Black Rose Dragon is because we didn't really have a lot of good ways to make it and just be in a good situation anyways. Because we took Card Trooper out, we don't have like an easy way to make level 7s in the first place. The primary way you just do that now is like Prime Material Dragon with the level 1, uh, or like Tragodia, for instance. You can do like Debris Dragon instant fusion situation that go into a Black Rose if we had Dragoness, but you're just kind of like not going anywhere that turn. That was the main problem with Black
Yeah,
Rose.
like you're burning your normal summon and your extender and instant fusion to nuke the field, and you can't set up a board after. So there's no point in that play, in my opinion. And we already ran so many sweepers, right?
Yeah,
You have Storm, Trinity, Vortex, so why do you need to Black Rose?
yeah. It was like this. It would be like since we cut the trooper, it was just like super situational. So like a lot of people throughout the turn were like, they don't have Black Rose in their extra deck. That's weird. But that's the reason. And we decided to play Ancient Fairy Dragon just because it can wall against Hero Beat. They don't really have a lot of ways to get over it if it happens to come up. So you can kind of stall versus that deck. I'm not sure if it stalls
I
versus anything
mean,
else, but
they can still use what do you call it?
Spark or
Spark and Honest Audit. So I wouldn't necessarily rely on it,
yeah,
but it definitely walls Trap Dragons. And my main point of including it actually was to out Zombie World, which came up to me once in testing when I was playing some zombie dude. I had Red Med and Prime, and he dropped a Zombie World, and then my Red Med couldn't revive anything, right? So then I realized, oh, I could normal summon Whitestone here, make Ancient Fairy Dragon, and then pop the Zombie World. And yeah, so that's why it came up.
yeah. It didn't come up for me at all in the tournament, but I can. It's respectable, so that's why it's there. And then you can't conduct your battle phase the turn, but you can summon a level 4 lower, which maybe make a level 8 or something if you have to. And then we got Brionic, pretty crazy card alongside Tempest for your level 6. We didn't play Goyo. Goyo, like, I've been playing this deck for a year, and it only came up in, like, one situation. It was, like, a pretty mediocre situation. So, like, most of the time you're just making Brionic, and then occasionally Tempest. But, and you only do that through Infusion anyways. So, yeah, great card, and you just don't really need Goyo. And then Colossal Fighter, Pro Storm, you mainly added this. I can see why it comes up for like a feel if you're playing as like a Dragon Mirror and they don't have Drago for whatever reason. Like if they go like Future Fusion and then bring 2 Red Eyes out, then there's like maybe a world where you can Colossal Fire crash into both of them, maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
it's kind of niche. It's really only making it with fours, uh, or sometimes you level it up through Exploder Dragon Wing. But it's yeah, it's probably one of the candidates we can cut.
yeah, and it's like a situation where like if for instance if they have like a bigger monster like I don't know, Red Dragon Archfiend for example, and they attack, and then you drop Gores, then you can or Trag, then you can make this, and if there's like two warriors in the grave, you can like crash into it and then get another 3,000 in, and then that might be enough for game. So it's pretty niche, but it might come up. Um, Here's like the more playable monsters. You got Dark End Dragon, which you can make through Trag or Gores pretty easily. It's very good just because you can get rid of monsters, pesky monsters like a Reaper or something, very easy. It's probably like one of the more important extra deck monsters. And we talked about Exploder Dragonwing uh, and Trident Dragon, and then the last two are just kind of like Red Dragon Archfiend. Uh, he's pretty nice just for like being really big and then just clearing a field of like defense mode monsters, for example.
Yeah, like Pyramid Turtles or Dandy Tokens. It actually comes up decently against Quick Draw.
Yeah, because they try to like wall you out with like all their tokens and stuff, and you just have to wait to like wipe them all out. And then occasionally you summon Stardust Dragon if you're just trying to protect the field. I made it one time in the tournament, which was just it was fine. Uh, I don't. Did you make Stardust at all?
No, not at all.
Yeah, it's not like super necessary, but if you have like a situation where you're trying to like protect the board, then like of a red med Drago or something like that, then it could be okay. But yeah, that's the whole deck. We just wanted to thoroughly go through everything and explain the deck as much as possible, and we can just kind of go over like I have like the results of like because we did like a lot of numbers testing and all that, and we just want to quickly go over like the numbers that we had. And this is from like we had our own numbers from like just like solitaire testing. Like you did 50 test hands, I did 50 test hands, and we had like the results of what we thought. But this lined up for the most part pretty well throughout the tournament, and like this includes the side deck as well. So I think these are like pretty good numbers to go off of. Um, but yeah, anyways, see, we got here like turn one Future Fusion, you're getting it about 30% of the time, and then turn two Future Fusion, you're getting about 10, which is gonna be higher in this deck, just because you have so many draw cards and you're seeing more of your deck, so you're gonna bound to draw Future Fusion more. So within the first two turns, you're seeing it at least around like 40%, which is almost half your gains, which is pretty high. So like a lot of people are like, oh my god, he sacked Future Fusion, but a lot of the time you're going to be seeing the card in this deck. Um, and then you got like the turn one pop off hands where you're just pretty much auto win. It's about 30% of the time, which is pretty high. People probably don't expect that to be that high, but it can be. Um, oh, and then we had the was this the one that you're highlighting the actual results from the tournament?
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually 35%
Yeah,
pop off turn one in the actual tournament run. And the test hands we had was about 30%. Uh, so yeah, and sorry, and to clarify by pop off, we're talking like Future Fusion, Resolve, multiple trade-ins, and with like Red Med, Prime, six cards in hand, and
yeah,
that's just like ridiculous.
yeah. Like your opponent has to have like the absolute like perfect hand to beat the deck at that point. And that was something we talked about in our testing because I was on turbo and then you were just like playing the other decks for testing just to see how they go. And like I would lose some games, but you were saying like you pretty much needed like obscurely like OP hands to like just have a chance to beat me.
Yeah, exactly. It would be some combination of like BrainCon, Dad, Burial, or Whirl, Sirocco, Gale,
And like dust shoot and
like, but it would always be like BrainCon, guaranteed, like required, and just like all these one-off cards that are highly unlikely to draw,
I
or
think
like Diva Hero, like
yeah.
Future Fusion, Miracle, Diva, Stratos, Wind Blast, Solemn, Dust Shield, like the absolute nuts, right?
Yeah. And there was like even games where you had like I think there was a game where you had like solemn dust shoot like on your opening going first and then like I still managed to win that, which is pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
Because most of the
I
times
mean,
this is like a game
it's
stealer.
just more stress. Yeah, yeah. And I even played a Solemn right? Like I Solemn the draw spell, and then you top deck your way out of it.
Yeah. So yeah,
That,
that's what were you gonna say?
yeah. No, I was just gonna say that's what makes Solemn so risky in a matchup. Like ideally you want a Solemn and turn one like draw spell that just shuts them off from going off. But then you're at 4,000. so they don't even need to pop off. They just need a single red med to kill you. So it's
Yeah,
Solemn's definitely risky.
it just makes it like that much easier to win because all you need is like a way to summon red men, and that's pretty much game. Yeah, so like that's like the turn one pop off. It's around 30 to 35%. 35% in tournament is actually like more impressive because you do have the side deck. So it's technically it should be like a little bit less consistent because you're taking MSC out and stuff like that, but it turned out to be a little bit higher. And this is both our results combined. So we had like our individual results, and then we combined them into like a
Yeah. So
uh,
40 game sample size
yeah,
in a tournament.
and we had the 50 or 100 test hands as well with the main deck. Anyways, decent playable hands. Um, I had 12 and you had 4, which I had a little bit more. The main difference in our results, I guess, is like we both had about the same amount of pop off turn one hands. Uh, I had a couple more games actually than you did, so you actually popped off way more than I did. But I had a lot of decent playable hands, whereas you had a little bit more of the brick hands. I had 4, you had 6, so that's probably where it differed a little bit. But anyways, decent playable hands is like hands where it's like it's okay. You have like Gorse or Trag that stall out, or like you have a fighting chance to like draw your way out of it, um, or you just have like a mini pop off turn one where you just like you summon red mid or prime material or something like that. It's a
Yeah.
playable hand.
I call like something playable is still really good.
Yeah,
Like turn one, like red med prime, 4 cards in hand. That's still a really good turn one start, right? So yeah, definitely decent playable is basically anything that doesn't brick but doesn't pop off.
yeah.
Uh,
And
so
most of
pretty
most of
wide
those
range.
hands are like actually just good enough to like outright win the game anyways. I find like
Yeah, I mean you're just one like dragon away from unlocking all your draw
yeah.
spells and just digging. So
Yep. And then we had like the hands where it was just like a turn one brick, like you just straight up like pass turn, which isn't necessarily nearly bad. Just you just need the extra piece, but that's around 25%. Uh, so and then we had like percentages for like the amount like you had the turn one brick can, and then you had opportunities to unbrick turn two, turn three, which it's Edison format. You're gonna have time to like draw out of situations because a lot of decks can't just like kill you turn one or two even. So you have like chances to get out of it. So you had like the initial like 25% brick hands, and then we had 10% to get out of it. Uh, the second turn, and then an extra 5% turn three. So and then you have the stay brick, which was 10%. So 1 out of 10 games, you're just probably just gonna lose from bricking, which unless your opponent just can't really do anything themselves. Which I find like all the decks in Edison format, like they all have their brick hands or like hands that's like not very good, where it's like summon Spine Gilman, and that's all they have. Uh, which is it's something, but like it's not gonna win you the game most of the time. So I find like even the games you brick hard, like the 10% is like it's okay when you're looking at the rest of the meta. I find so.
yeah, I mean I can even talk on this a bit more because I can
Yeah.
talk about my specific brick games. For example, like versus the quick draw guy, by game one, like I opened really bad by set Flamvel Guard, hoping to tribute for Prime next turn, and I had a Rejuve and Dragon hand. But he opened nuts. He opened like quick draw Dandy, which is I think like a 10% open, and he attacked into my set when I thought he wouldn't do that because it could be a Raikou, but turns out he was scouting secretly. So yeah, even like that really bad brick hand, my opponent needed to open quick draw Dandy to threaten it. Otherwise, like if he sets Raikou, then I just drop Prime, run over to Raikou, get Rejuve going, and then I'm okay, right? And I
Yeah.
have Dragon hand. And versus Solchess, like both games, I mean, I bricked pretty bad. But like even the game three when I bricked, I still ended up making a board of Prime, Red Med, Debris, and he had a deep prison. And then he dropped Trag still, and went like Trag Diva Dad, which is a really strong hand from Diva from zombies, right? Like if he didn't have Dad, I was still okay. because I still had Prime and Debris.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is with these brick hands, the only I mean we're calling them brick because we don't go rejuve draw like 20 cards and autumn win. Like at the end of the day, red med is still really strong. So you just need to land one red med and you're kind of good to go.
Yeah. Like if you're like laning Gores, Trag, or Red Med, like you're actually in the game. Like because all three of those cards can just like pretty much carry on their like the game on their backs, like just by themselves. Like I had games where it's just like resolving a Gores or Trag is just like way too much for the opponent to deal with. And like those monsters are gonna be massive. Like Trag's gonna be like 33,000 to 3,600 attack. I had a tournament before. It was like Edison Legends last year where specifically remember like I didn't have anything other than Trag, and Trag just soloed the entire game versus him. Like he just could not beat a huge Trag, which is hilarious. But yeah, this deck doesn't brick nearly as much as people think. And if we look at the numbers, like just from our tournament combined, so you have like about 35 to 40. If you combine these like pop off into decent playable hands, I mean that's like 75% of the time, and then you have the turn one brick, but that whittles down to like 10% if you unbrick. So I think the win percentages for this deck is pretty high actually. Like you're just probably just gonna be like winning most of your games.
Yeah, I'd say like overall this deck is really good. It's better against better players because it's really hard to outplay really strong opponents, right? Because they're not going to make misplays. They can make reads, and there's like a bunch of tactics involved. So when two really good players are playing each other, it usually just comes down to who has the better deck with the higher ceiling and gets luckier, right? And that person gambling with the higher ceiling deck is obviously playing with more variance. So if they do end up bricking, then the other guy's just going to win off of sheer consistency. But I think if you're going into these tournaments, you need to roll the die with like Dragon Turbo or Lightsworn, because something that's consistent but pretty linear, like Hero Beat, they're always going to top, but I don't think they're ever going to win just because their ceiling isn't high enough, right?
Yeah, they just can't pressure or they don't have like as many auto win cards. Where it's like this deck, it can dig for those auto win cards and just resolve them way better than any other deck. Like this deck probably has like the highest ceiling of all the Edison format decks. I mean, it technically has like the lowest ceiling, but I was kind of like the trade off. But like even times like it's almost better to do nothing than something. Like if you have like because like you get set cards and all that, but you walk in a lot of decks like play Raikou, Caius, Wing Blast, and just like disruptive cards. If you're not doing anything, all those cards are just pretty much dead. Like what are they gonna do? Flip Raikou, mill three, summon Caius, banish their own card, Icarus attack, blow up their own stuff just to pop your one card that you're resolving, like Future Fusion or something. So it makes it really awkward for your opponent to play against this deck. And yeah, overall, I think the percentages work pretty much in our favor.
Yeah, and it's a decent sample size too, and I think the fact that both of us did really well speaks pretty well, like speaks for the deck itself. Um, like opponents are definitely not slouches either, right? Like they're all pretty solid players. And yeah,
Cool. Yeah, we were even talking about like it'd be really sick if we both made top eight with this because you already had your invite to the Edison Rulers tournament at the end of the year, if by making top eight in the Ribbit one. But I did not have it because I did commentary on the first Ribbit one, and then I played Vayu Turbo at the second Ribbit, which was a mistake, and then this one I topped. So I just really want to get the top, and then we both made top eight, which is really cool in itself. And then you got sixth to seventh, or seventh to eighth place, and then I got second place, which was a pretty good turning out. So I played this deck in three tournaments now. Edison Legends I got third. Rise of Edison, well, Edison Legends was 120 players, and Rise of Edison was about like around 90 to 100, and I got ninth or 10th in that tournament, and then this one I got second. So
you would have
overall,
topped it. Yeah, and you would have topped the second one if the guy didn't see three honest.
yeah, I got like bodied in that game because he double honest me, and then he pie Ivers, and then drew the honest again, and then game three, he um, he
It
opened like
was
literally like
hard to like.
the god card, like the god hand with light sworn. He went like Lumina Gareth, and he got like he drew two off Gareth. He milled Plague and Necro, and he milled Wolf. I was like, and this was all turn one. I was like, okay, I had a decent hand, but I couldn't deal with that at that time. So, but yeah, I think overall the deck's really well built. We took a lot of time into it. There's definitely like I feel like we can make improvements on the deck, slight improvements, maybe different game plans versus some decks. Uh, but yeah, we just wanted to show off everything with this deck and let everyone know. I'm gonna do like videos for like each of my rounds in the tournament, just so people can understand how the deck plays, because that's something like I get asked a lot. Personally, is like, how does this deck work? They just look at it, they see blue eyes, and they're like question mark. Um, so yeah, I'll be making videos probably this week, just showing off the deck from the replays in the tournament and talk about those. And yeah, so I hope everyone enjoyed this video. Is there anything else you want to add, ProStorm, before we head out?
No, I think it was pretty comprehensive, and um, I think more people will be playing this now, for better or for worse, and
Yeah.
we'll have to adapt because there'll be specific hate for this deck, maybe even like main deck DD Crow or these really niche side cards that could honestly scare me a bit. But that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You influence the meta, and then people adapt, and then you adapt to their
Yeah.
adaptation.
That's
So
one thing about
yeah,
Edison format is like the car pool isn't changing, but like every tournament there's like a big like just meta call. Like the format's constantly changing. Like if you look at the results from Ribbit 1, 2, and 3, like different decks are constantly topping and adjusting to like what the current meta is at that time. So really interesting format. If you're looking forward to getting involved in the tournament or just the format, there's Discord communities. There's even like locals popping up around the world for Edison format. You see YouTube videos about it and stuff. And we have edisonformat.com. That's a great resource. And then the format library. That's another great resource. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed this video. We're going to be heading out. Thanks everyone watching, and take care.